and welcome to another episode of AlphaMale Boxing Television. My name is Jon Collins, and today we have a special guest interview from the United States of America. And in front of me I have Ronald Johnson, who's a 16-1 heavyweight. He's also a politician. He's been involved with Don King. And he's come back into the fight game now to get a stellar future. So if it's okay with you, Ron, I'm going to be asking you a few questions. Obviously, you're 16-1, which is a great record. Don King was regarding you as one of the future heavyweight stars of the division not so long ago. So tell me, why the layoff, and what are you planning to do in your next fight, which I believe is coming up a rematch is coming up quite soon?
Correct. Well, pretty much I had a layoff just due to I'm a businessman outside the ring, and kind of like that shifted my focus. I've been boxing since I was 7 years old, so sometimes you get a little burnt out, and just, boxing had started to not be fun for me anymore because it became a business. So it's just like almost anything else, sometimes you can, in boxing, it comes a lot of politics, and sometimes, you can get burnt out from it. But, I just took some time off, rejuvenated, made other things important, that was important to me in my life. Number one, with having kids and family, so I wanted to be able to secure my family's future in other avenues, in other ways that I know that would be more guaranteed than just boxing. So that's the things that I focused on, because I've seen too many prior fighters, prior champions leave the game with nothing, and then they have to start their life over. So
it's a hard sport for everybody. I mean, we have a fighter here who's retired now, Lester Jacobs. He retired 29-0, and he won a WBF title and some sort of British title. But he spent 16 years out raising his family. Then he came back, and he had about another 10, 12 fights, and he's happy. Sometimes that is, that's what you have to do. Of course, you got to do. You're absolutely totally right to do that, because even Bill Withers in the music business, I mean, he took a long time before he left his job. Even though he had the big albums out, he wouldn't leave his job in the automotive industry. He said, "I'm not trusting this entertainment business to look after me." He said, right. That's it. So absolutely, I totally concur with that. Now, this is a rematch against a Latino fighter. The only fight you've actually lost was to Darnell Boone, who in his day was a pretty decent contender, actually. He was a highly respected fighter, so no disgrace there. This rematch, who wanted the rematch? Because you already beat the guy.
Right, I beat him. So, we were looking at a couple different opponents. I kind of using it as a yardstick. We had this fight 2 years ago where, where I was coming off of a layoff, and it was a good, tough fight, and the fans loved it. But the fighter, he stayed in my Facebook messages, stayed in all my inboxes, wanted a rematch, and did some different things, and I thought it would be great for the promotion. So that's why we decided to, look at him again and kind of see from where I was then to where I am now, what's the difference. Which that was 2 years ago. I've fought a couple times since.
I've
see how it goes.
I've checked it up. Now, you started off as a light heavy, and now you started super middle. Yeah.
My first pro fight
was super middle. Wow. How many fights have you had at heavy?
How many fights at heavy?
Yeah.
I would say maybe 4.
4 fights at heavy.
4 or 5.
Now, obviously, it's a silly question, but I'm going to answer it. 5'10.5", Mike Tyson was the same. He found a way to get to the big guys, right, by his tremendous hand speed and his movement. Now, I've seen you on the pads. I've seen one fight, but I've seen you're very fast on the pads. And obviously, another obvious comparison is Andy Ruiz. Anthony Joshua was told to get busy by his promoters, by his trainers during the fight, but Ruiz got busier because he had 6 shots, answered 2 shots. So
Correct.
is that speed, is that what you're going to be bringing now, that hand speed to the division?
The hand speed and just, my boxing ability and my ring IQ. Yeah, I'm a smaller heavyweight. I don't mind it. Like I said, in this day and age, and I can pick and choose which direction I want to go. I really like the Anthony Joshua and the Anthony Ruiz's. They're not, well, Joshua's a bigger guy, but Ruiz is, a few inches taller than me. That's a fight we're looking at possibly in July. So,
well, that would be great.
So, in total contravention to how you and Lester and other boxers done things, Anthony Joshua got smashed to pieces by Andy Ruiz in a big shock. He then takes he doesn't even take maybe 1 month out, that's it. No change of trainers. He's going straight back into that fight with Ruiz in Saudi Arabia.
right.
Do you think that he maybe should have had a year out to gather himself, get a new team and get his head together?
It's hard to say, when it's not, from the outside looking in. I usually like to trust and say whatever's best for everybody, they do what's best for them. I don't know if it was more of him taking Ruiz lightly, or if he just wasn't prepared, or it was a shock, or it was a mental thing. I don't know what really was going on, but he definitely wasn't the same guy we've been seeing. So that night, right? So
yeah,
and I don't know if that's more of a credit to Andrew Ruiz who jumped on the situation. I mean, it's just even the way Anthony Joshua was just looking in the face, like just everything just didn't look right that day. You know what I mean?
Nothing looked right, did it? Nothing looked right.
I don't know. It was just a bad night, and then he did knock Ruiz down, and he may have just not took the fights that serious because of the whole Miller thing went out, and as a fighter, there's no excuses. But I'm just saying these are things that could have possibly just altered his mind, and he probably looked at Ruiz like, okay, I'll put this guy out of there, and then it didn't happen, and kind of threw him off, and he just, wow out there, so from there, but I'm rooting for Ruiz in the rematch. Don't get me wrong, but I think if Joshua make a couple different tweaks, I think he can really knock him out this time.
It's going to be very interesting, and going back to your
That fight though is dangerous because in the back of your mind, you know that this guy beat you now already. Not only he stopped you actually, So that's going to be. I don't know how much mental strength Anthony Joshua has. So this is a real tester, and it's a risky one because if he goes out there and loses again, it's pretty much, he's still to be a marquee name. Don't get me wrong, but the star power definitely diminishes.
Well, it's not just Anthony Joshua. He's actually carrying what the pundits think is the future of British heavyweight boxing because, he's drawing 80,000 people to Wembley Stadium or to the Millennium Stadium.
It's a lot on the line.
I mean, which heavyweights or any boxers draw that sort of that drawing power? So it's a big fight for British boxing. And going on to the heavyweights that we have over here, it's our strongest era in heavyweight boxing because we have a number of fighters that, have done well. Now, whether that's because they're excellent heavyweights or whether that's because the American heavyweight scene is not as great as it was. And I just want to touch on that for 1 second.
Right.
And I want you to answer this question because you're probably about the best person to answer it. Back in the day, you had your George Foremans, your Alis, you had your Ron Lyles, you had your Ernie Shavers, you had a whole string of great boxers, and that was replaced by another generation and another generation with Tyson and then Holyfield moving up and all the rest of it. These were even people like Michael Tate and the Spinks, Tony Tucker. These are all decent heavyweights.
Right.
I'm looking at the current generation of American heavyweights, black American heavyweights. It's not there, right? Generally speaking, and it's my opinion, and I could be wrong, that a lot of black families are not allowing or not guiding their sons into the boxing gym. They're doing other things. They're doing business. They're doing, everything but boxing because, and that's what it seems to me, that's what's happened to them. And I think that's contributory to the fact that, heavyweight boxing is from, I don't know what your views are on that. You've been out it's interesting that Deontay Wilder, he came to boxing late and he's doing it because of his daughter, because his daughter's not been very well. Okay, and he says that he done it because of her. You've had a long layoff, you've put your business interests first. So in a way, you didn't go up through the conveyor belt. So I just want your views on that situation. Are we, is that the end of the American heavyweight in truth, or will we see a resurgence at some point?
Right. Well, I think heavyweight boxing right now is in a great state, right? But to address the point that you said, I think that I just think it was, from the era aspect, that's why I give so much credit to Don King, right? He was the heavyweight promoter. Like, he promoted, I don't think promoters really promote anymore. Like, there's no reason why Deontay Wilder, for instance, being an American heavyweight, shouldn't be a lot more popular than he really is.
Yeah.
As far as, I don't think they have the correct vehicle behind them as far as, it's like the PPC is a great platform and everything, but it just don't give that edge where people heavyweight champion of the world, you're like the baddest man on the planet, right?
Absolutely.
You're supposed to be the baddest man on the planet.
Absolutely.
Like that. When Mike Tyson, it didn't matter if MC Hammer came in the room, it didn't matter if it was Joe Montana, football, it didn't matter. Mike Tyson walked in the room.
Over everybody. Absolutely.
Like you're the king of the hill.
Absolutely.
You don't get that presence with that. None of the heavyweights pretty much nowadays.
None.
But especially an American heavyweight that's been as dominant as the Wilder, knocking people out and giving the people that type of, that thrill that they used to have with like Tyson and stuff. You just never know what happens in this fight. But I think that's more of a damaging aspect when it comes to our promoters.
So it's the promoters that are not promoting it properly.
Correct. I think
it's part of the reason.
Promoters got a lot lazier now because back in the day, back now, when the boxing business, a promoter goes and negotiate with the network saying, hey, I'm gonna give you guys $10 million for this fight. He goes and gives Wilder 5 and 3 and go give Ortiz 4. He puts $2 million in his pocket. He don't even need to push the fight anymore. He already made his money. He don't care.
That does make a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Versus like the Kings and Aaron back in the day, they had to actually go and create these events and create the money. They had to go and create it all, and they didn't have these vehicles that we have today. The social, like everything else is like, okay, long as this guy posted, he got this, he got that. It just, like I said, I think to me, just promoters got lazier, instead of getting a guy, like, they're doing a good job with Fury now, like on the WWE thing and all these different things, but I just think that, like I said, Wilder's 10 steps behind it. It's just a lot of different things that they could be.
It's a problem with Wilder because, he's got such a thunderous punch that makes him so sellable.
And he has a good personality that could.
He's got a good personality, yes.
It's just he could. I think it's just you have to find that right mesh for him as far as what can he do or attach himself to or different things that could bring out that character more without it being super cliche. Not just the normal promotional or go to a basketball game wave for people. None of that. More something different. Like the Fury in WWE, that's like a match made in heaven. That's him all day.
Him all day. I watched it. It was funny. It was funny. Exactly. Whether it was staged or not, it was funny. Now, that's really interesting, and that's a very valid point you make, and I come away educated. Back to Ronald Johnson. There's a rumor going around that you actually want to have a fight in the UK. Is this a rumor, or is this true say?
It's true say. I definitely want to come to the UK. I want to, it's always, I grew up being around Mike Tyson a lot. And one thing we used to always talk about, he said no knock against world champions, but in order to be considered a real world champion, you got to fight around the world champion. Yeah. And I always believed in that, and I want to be able to, no matter where I go, I want to be able to, be able to show my case, my talent anywhere in the world, and don't mind about boxing, politics. I believe my ability to take me anywhere and prevail.
Ron, you can't see me right now. This is Michael. We spoke before. You obviously know about our company, AlphaMale Sports Entertainment. So we're a promotional company. We've been making big noise and big moves in Africa. Because of the politics around boxing, we wanted to start something in Africa and move back to the Western world. And we're starting to do that more and more now with Jon and Hope, which is, these are all guys that's part of the team. Now, the rumor about UK, I'm the one that started that rumor, so I'm really proud of that. We would really like to see you fight under the AlphaMale banner and maybe start talking about putting something together after your fight on the 12th. So, I think the last time we spoke, I said to you, whether it's a win or lose, and we're hoping for a win, and we still need to make that happen. So, how do you feel about that?
Hey, I'm open to it all. I'm open to it all. We put it together. You can reach out to Manny, and let's put it together. We come to the UK, come to Africa, and I love to be on the AlphaMale platform, and we can do some sort of co-promotion or whatnot, and make it happen and make it big and beneficial for all involved.
That's great. We're looking forward to that. I'll put you back over to Jon.
I've got one more question, right? So we have the regular heavyweights over here, which is basically Joshua, Fury. Dillian White has a big problem because of this drugs business, which still hasn't been resolved. We've got a few contenders. Joe Joyce is coming through. He's moved very fast. But the biggest talked about fighter over here at the moment is Daniel Dubois, who's a heavyweight who's 13-0 now. Have you heard about Daniel Dubois? Have you seen any of his fights? If so, what do you think?
I haven't watched him. I've been starting to hear his name more, but I haven't watched him. Hey, I just said it. I want all heavyweights. I want all the smoke.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, if you could bring that speed.
I love to come over there.
Listen, Shannon Briggs regards this as his second home. He loves it over here. And if he loves it, if we can get you over here and we can build you up and get you the right media in London,
We can bring him. We'll be with him starting tomorrow. We had in LA. Because we've been training with Logan Paul and those guys. So
right.
We'll be seeing him. So he'll be at my fight Saturday, and we'll bring him with us.
Fantastic.
It's been wonderful talking to you. Really appreciate the contribution you made today. And thank you very much for joining us on AlphaMale Boxing TV.
Thank you for having me, and appreciate you guys, and look forward to doing some future business and AlphaMale TV. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thanks a lot, bro.
Thank you
very much.
Thanks, bro. Thank you.
Soon.
All right.
Okay, bye. Yeah.
So, Mike, that was a really, really, really good interview with Ronald Johnson. He's an engaging character, and because he's a mature man, he's taken that time out of boxing. I think that he is pretty marketable over here. Shannon Briggs has a massive following over here.
Yeah.
And I think we can support this man in the same way because there's some big fights for him here.
Yeah.
There's 5 or 6 heavyweights that he's good enough to box, and he possibly could shock them.
Well, I think one of the things that we're saying, even obviously in his interview, it's always a pleasure speaking to a boxer that has intelligence, even in their speaking. You understand? Because then that you're dealing with somebody that understands the game of boxing, the politics of boxing, and everything else that comes with boxing. I spoke to him a while ago about obviously him fighting under the AlphaMale brand. And he was very happy to do that. And between myself, Hope, and yourself, I think we can definitely start to promote him and lift up his profile here in the UK, and start allowing boxers to see, who who he is and what he's capable of, and also for him to, I think he needs to sort of kind of like get to grips with some of the British boxers as well, because he had not heard of
Daniel Dubois.
Daniel Dubois, which I think after what we said, he probably would take a look at him.
He will now have already seen Daniel Dubois. He'll be going on it almost straight away.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's kind of indicative of his detachment from boxing for all these years. He's not, and I've seen it before, he's still not quite yet in the groove of following it.
Yeah.
Right, because he's been out for so long, and he's got other interests as well. He's not been following boxing. I saw a fighter with a British fighter years ago called Cornelius Carr, who was an exceptionally good fighter, and I promoted him. In the latter stages of his career, he was a world champion, but he never was interested in following boxing because he took a couple of years out when his mother died. But yeah, I mean, I think he's got to that point where he definitely wants it. You can see that.
So what do you think what do you think his future would be? Win or lose? Like, let's start from lose. Say,
Right. Let's say that he comes over here. Let's say that he fights Joe Joyce. Yeah. Let's say that he puts up a good fight against Joe Joyce, but loses on points. So he can fight Derek Chisora. He can fight Joseph Parker from New Zealand. He can fight any of the British heavyweights, because by losing to Joyce on a decent level, not getting stopped or badly outmatched, he can get those fights still. Sometimes it's good to lose a fight in boxing as it is to win it. Yeah. Right. If he were to beat a Joe Joyce or one of the contenders coming through, a fight I'd like to see actually would be him, Ronald Johnson against Nathan Gorman, who Daniel Dubois stopped for the British title. Right, okay. Because Gorman's a 6 foot, is an Andy Ruiz size heavyweight. And I think that would be a good boxing match.
So that'd be a good climbing stone for his profile.
Absolutely,
here in the UK.
Absolutely. Yeah, because Gorman will be looking for what's on paper an easy-ish fight. He won't want to box a journeyman. He'll want to box somebody with a bit of ambition. And that's a fight that we could make. Quite easily. It's a right fight, because if TV are going to show Nathan Gorman again after getting stopped by Dubois, it's going to have to be in a meaningful competitive fight. So that's a fight.
But do you think that he would want to take a fight like that, or would he want to take a fight like Dubois straight away, or somebody on that level that's more on a, because he's coming on a winning
He's coming on a winning streak, and let's see how he does. Let's how he does on the weekend.
Because his fight is on the 12th. His fight is on the 12th, so
he's not going to be ring rusty. But then you look beneath. You got the big three, which is Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, Dillian White, if he's allowed to continue boxing. Then you've got Chisora, who's something of a gatekeeper, and then after that you've got 2 or 3 contenders. There's not that much below that.
This is it.
Yeah, you've got 7 or 8 fighters, right? But when you get past that 7 in the British rankings,
like, what's next?
There's nobody of any note. They're either journeymen or guys that aren't really going anywhere. It's not as the British heavyweight scene is not as deep as one would imagine.
But I think that's the heavyweight scene all around right now, isn't it?
It's the heavyweight scene in America is as
that's the mecca.
About.
That's the mecca of boxing.
Well, we discussed that, and I had my theory, and he had his theory, and I think both of them are.
Exactly. I believe so. Yeah, both of them.
Both of them have merit. Heavyweight scene in general, there's a lot of Russians, there's a lot of Eastern Europeans. You're probably right. The heavyweight scene, despite the way they've been talking it up, the heavyweight scene is not particularly good. So yeah, there is a dearth of heavyweights, but for him coming over here. I would say that the best way to do it, there's no point in him having a low-key fight against someone number 10 or 11 in the British rankings. It's a complete waste of time. He needs to box, Gorman's about number 10, so he would need to box Gorman or above. A fight, but the good thing is that Eddie Hearn is Frank Warren's got a heavyweight with Dubois, Eddie Hearn's got heavyweights. There is the stages there for someone like, there are the stages here for him to have. And everyone likes a fight between an American and a Brit. There is something sort of classic rivalry about that.
So it's a tasteful rivalry, but it's a good rivalry. It's definitely
a good rivalry.
So let me come to the last, because as we're about to wrap up, whatever, talking about the heavyweight scene not being what, every generation thinks switches up and changes up, whatever. So with AlphaMale, you know, John, you've been been a big part of what we've been doing in Africa and everything with the boxers that we have in Africa. We've already spoken about this. We've got at least a couple of hundred boxers, whatever, of which some of them is heavyweight and whatever. What's the next? I mean, I know we've probably spoken about this already. What is the next? Because you're now not only speaking to obviously the British crowd or the American crowd, but we have to also speak to these guys on the sidelines in Africa now. That
Very
we've
important,
created a massive. We are the All African Boxing Board of Control, which you're part of as well.
Yeah.
WBU, which you play a very strategic part of moving forward with that. What are we saying to these African boxers as far as AlphaMale, sports entertainment and sports management, WBU?
Let me tell you exactly, and I'll break it down. Right, I'll break it down. We've seen two African boxers box Daniel Dubois. Yeah. One was Richard Lartey from Ghana, and he put up a hell of a fight, and it was a great fight as long as it lasted. Dubois stopped him. Then they got in a guy called Ebenezer Tete for his last fight, and I thought, despite the fact that it lasted only one round, and Dubois, I actually thought Tete was at least competitive. The G-Man said he would be a dud, and on paper it looked like a dud because it was a one-round stoppage, right? There is a great future for African heavyweight boxing, and there's a great future for AlphaMale and the AAA BSC to bring that together. Because with Lartey, he came in fit and strong. The only thing that he lacked was a quality sparring. Okay, so because there's a worldwide dearth in other territories, I think that what we need to do is to find a posse, a cadre of African heavyweights, get them trained up, get them the right sparring, bring them over here, get them back over there, fights there, fights here, and we need to make African heavyweight boxing a real force. Because I can tell you, no matter what Ronald says, that the black American heavyweight is finished. It's finished. Because
for now.
Well, the problem is that sociologically, a lot of the, no matter what you might read, the black American population has moved big time up in the world. Right? And I'm afraid that boxing is not on their agenda. Same as it wasn't the agenda of the Jews when they moved out to better things after the war. Same as it wasn't the agenda of some of the Hispanic. As soon as you move into affluence. So
that's because when boxing was always like a way out.
It's a way out of the
poverty,
ghetto.
And
it's a way out of the ghetto, and as soon as you move out of the ghetto, that community is done. It's finished.
So are you saying, for example, like a Ronald Johnson, for example, his kids, if he
no
makes
chance.
it about his kids, he wants his kids to be doctors and lawyers. And
Correct.
And any sensible person should want that. Really, unless they display something special and unique. But why just put your child in that if you don't?
Deontay Wilder is an intelligent, fairly decent human being. His father was a preacher. The only reason he's doing boxing is because of his daughter was ill. It was a quick way for him to get funds to pay for his daughter's ill health. That is the reality. The reason why the black American heavyweight, the white Americans never produced a heavyweight. They just never did. Maybe there was one, two. There was Jerry Cooney, who achieved limited success. There was Tommy Morrison, God rest his soul. They never produced a white heavyweight. That was just two. Black America produced many, many contenders and great champions. It's finished.
Okay, John. Okay, let me ask you one last question.
This is why Africa is the way to go.
Well,
that's the point. They will fill that void. The African heavyweights should fill that void.
And I think they've been waiting on the sidelines for so long.
They have.
There is a lot of things, and I'm speaking directly to the African boxers as well. We've made a massive template and a massive avenue for them to come through, which is something, like I said, we've all been part of this, you know what I mean, and it's been happening, and it's going to continue to happen. We have a championship, some championship fights coming in Benin on the 9th of November, and it's supposed to be another big one. I can't be there, but we'll have a team that would go there and represent for us. Now, we were speaking about this earlier on. A lot of the African fighters, because of financial restraint and things like that, whatever, a lot of their fights that they've had, some of them have had 15 fights but it wasn't filmed. It wasn't filmed. They're on the newspapers and everything. So they're not on box recs, and then we've got these promoters that want to see a record on box rec. Now, this is something that we've started to sort out with yourself as well, playing a very big part of it. What's your message going forward to these African promoters in letting them understand the importance of the boxers having a visual representation of their fights?
Look, it's absolutely critical, and my message going forward to African promoters generally is this. All the way around the world, in every territory, there's fake fights that are going on. It's not just in Africa, it's in Eastern Europe, it's in the Philippines, it's all states, it doesn't matter where you are, there's these things called gym fights, okay? And that is where, in order to get a boxer's record up, the promoter will book a gym, there'll be about 10 people at the gym. They get some guy in there, some opponent, he does a few rounds of boxing, they get an official in there with a badge and they call that a professional fight. And that's been going on for years, and that is why you've seen these substandard opponents for title fights. Happens a lot in Eastern Europe. The biggest area of that corruption is in Eastern Europe, not even Africa. So my message to the African promoters is this, is just get legit, yeah? Get straightforward, get legit. Don't make the mistake of Eastern Europe and other places. Get your boxers in great shape, okay? Get their records. It's better for a heavyweight to be 7-0 on proper fights in proper stadiums than to have sort of a 20-0 record where 80% of them have been gym fights, right? They're called gym fights. They're fake fights because there's no proper crowd there. It's basically a glorified sparring session. Technically, they argue to BoxRec that that's a fight. They send the video. Do it legit. Even if it's a crowd of 300, 400, 500 people, it doesn't matter. Get that show done properly. Get your video done. Make it all official. Make sure the local boxing commissioner involved properly. No cutting corners. Get your video, and then you're going to see your money back many times over because your fighters will be seasoned, properly promoted. Everything will be legitimate, yeah, and then you'll start to command the big fees, particularly with the heavyweights.
Well, look, I mean, Jon has said it, and this is what the message we've been spreading for so long, exactly what you've been saying.
And there's one final point I'd make, and AlphaMale definitely have taken the lead in this particular regard. Get some boxing rings, whatever it takes, get some proper rings in the towns and the villages and the townships. Get some rings. Because if you don't get, if the promoters and the managers and the gyms and the gym owners don't get those rings, fighters cannot learn to cut the space down. Part of the professional boxing is all about learning to cut the ring down. If you don't practice in a ring and you've just got some ropes, you've got no idea of distance. You cannot measure that thing. And that's where a lot of African boxers in the last 10 or 15 years, particularly the Ghanaians, have come unstuck at Commonwealth title level because they just can't, they're tough, they're talented, they can punch, but they can't cut the ring down because they haven't practiced it, because they have no rings. So get your gyms and rings. I know AlphaMale have done a lot about that already, haven't they? Mali
and we'll continue to do that as well.
Critical, absolutely critical. The reason why Frank Warren is absolutely loves Daniel Dubois, partly because he's such a premier heavyweight, and that's what Warren invested in, but also because Daniel's like very humble. He dresses in suits and ties, and he doesn't have a smartphone. He has a Nokia phone. He's not interested. All he wants to do is he puts he gets in a corner. Right, he goes to his room, he watches fight tapes, he's in the gym the next day. He lives the dream. He doesn't, while everyone's out partying, he's just like money.
That's important. That's important.
Yeah, and it's the monasticism. You've got to be monastic in this game. Even Floyd Mayweather definitely was, whatever he says. He wasn't always a party animal. He was a monastic trainer. And if you can be monastic, then you can achieve things. If you're out piss-balling around everywhere, then you won't. And there's so many fighters that kind of are great talent, but if they don't apply themselves 1,000,000%, it's like that in the entertainment business. It's always the same thing,
Well, that's amazing. Well, it was a good show.
Yeah, it was. It was a very good show.
Yeah, good show.